Chelanga. And man, the Timberwolves emerged victorious with a game 1 victory. I don't know. Immediate reaction is Chelanga. I mean, there's a lot to get to, but what's your immediate reaction?
Well, I mean, I just think that they came out and competed. It was a comeback game for Karl-Anthony Towns. It feels like Anthony Edwards has arrived. It is a joyous occasion for Timberwolves fans everywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of places we could take this. I think for me, if I had to pick one overarching takeaway, it's Anthony Edwards, and I think that's the national takeaway as well. And so I feel like there's a couple of other things that I think we surely notice and Timberwolves fans notice that the national audience may not have, but it's impossible to not start with Anthony Edwards. You mentioned the Karl-Anthony Towns bounce back, and I think that's maybe 1B to Anthony Edwards 1A in my mind. I mean, Ant was just phenomenal. I guess the flip side of that is Timberwolves fans, I'm pretty confident, weren't expecting anything different from him in this game. He did exactly what we expected him to. He's got the demeanor, the poise, everything that we would expect Ant to be in this game. He was 36 points on 12 of 23 shooting, an efficient night, over 50% from the floor, 4 of 11 on threes, perfect 8 of 8 at the free throw line, got to the line 8 times, which is huge. Only 2 turnovers. He had a couple of blocks defensively, was really, really good. The Timberwolves had him kind of shadowing Ja at the end of the game, denying the catch on him multiple times when the ball was out of Ja's hands on the defensive end of the floor. You can't say enough about Ant's performance in this game.
Totally complete game from top to bottom, which, that's what we wanted to see coming into the playoffs. Like, can Anthony Edwards, when the biggest lights are shining, can he show up and do what he needs to do? And he did it, better than I could have even imagined.
Yeah, and Karl-Anthony Towns, you mentioned, bounce back game for him. Obviously, one of the worst games of his career on Tuesday in the play, and 29 and 13 in this game, an efficient 11 of 18. He got to the line 5 times, 2 of 5 outside the arc, 3 assists, a couple of blocks, no foul trouble. He actually flipped the script on the Grizzlies in this game, a complete reversal of what we saw on Tuesday. Towns was not in foul trouble. The Grizzlies front court was in foul trouble. Now, that's something Jaren Jackson Jr. struggles with as well. He's a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year and is an all-defense player, but he couldn't stay on the floor in this game. He ended up with 5 fouls, only played 24 minutes. Steven Adams was ineffective when he was on the floor, completely ineffective. One of the worst players on the floor in the game, I think. And he also was in foul trouble, finished with 5 fouls. So a phenomenal performance from Towns.
Yeah, I mean, the questions we all had after the Clippers games, and I think especially like the national media, he sort of came out and said, here's your answer. And he played like he has played this whole season, because, again, this has been one of Karl-Anthony Towns' best seasons of his career, statistically and record-wise. And so it was good to see him come out in game 1 of the actual playoffs and remind the world of just how good he is. D'Angelo Russell, a bit of a slump game from him. I guess what are your feelings about D'Angelo Russell after this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a lot of what we've seen from him all season, right? It's on and off D'Lo, and he had a couple stretches where he did some good things in this game. He had back-to-back impressive assists. I think it was like late third, early fourth quarter. He had a nice stretch, had a couple of nice defensive plays, but he had that bad turnover that led to the questionable clear path foul call. And like you said, the shooting numbers were not good. He did hit that big 3-pointer as well near the end,
Yes,
but for the most part, what was he? 2 for 11 in this game. He hit that 3-pointer and only one other shot from the field. He did have 9 assists, only 2 turnovers, one of those being a key turnover. So I actually think he ended up redeeming himself a little bit late in the game with the 3 and a couple of those assists. But yeah, obviously 2 of 11 is not what they're looking for. And really, I guess this has kind of been the Timberwolves for most of the season, is if two of the 3 of the big 3 can have big games or games at least in line with what we're typically seeing from them, and somebody else can step up, then they're going to be in good shape. And in this game, that somebody else was a couple of guys. It was really Jaden McDaniels and it was Malik Beasley off the bench. Were both fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about balance. You look at the shot distribution in this game. You looked at how many double-digit scorers we had outside of Towns and Ant, and it seemed like it was a very just complete game from the entire team, which is like what you want to see in game 1 of a playoff series is a team show up and compete. And win. So that gives me a lot of hope going forward that they can continue to perform like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think overall in this game, defensively, the Timberwolves did pretty good. I know you can look at the box score, and if you didn't watch the game, they gave up 117. This was a track meet. Well, it was, and there were obviously stretches where it was simply back and forth the entire time. However, I actually think Minnesota had a pretty good plan defensively. They mixed up their coverages a little bit on John Morant. They did a lot of blitzing and high wall pick and roll coverage, which we expected them to do, and was effective against him earlier this year. because the way Ja wants to play, it forces him into a really tough pass. And the way that teams have beaten that coverage this year is lob passes, skip passes. And we saw that early second quarter when Memphis, the Wolves were up, I think 9 at the end of the first, and then, or 8, I guess. And Memphis had this early second quarter push where they actually took a brief lead. And it was on the backs of these lob dunks. A couple were in transition after sloppy live ball turnovers by the Wolves, but then also some really impressive passing when the Wolves were I don't want to say overly aggressive because it worked for the rest of the game, really, but very aggressive in the pick and roll game. And the help side defense wasn't there. And the Grizzlies passed the ball, kind of tic-tac-toed it well enough to get a couple of lob dunks, more than a couple, really. I think it was 3 or 4 lob dunks. But outside of that stretch, early second quarter, and then maybe another Grizzlies push late in the game, which I don't know that was as much bad Wolves defense as it was sloppy offense, leading to, again, live ball turnovers and fast break points for Memphis. I think for the most part, the Timberwolves defense was really impressive. I thought Malik Beasley was good in his minutes. D'Lo was fine. Anthony Edwards was really good. Jaden McDaniels was great. And Karl-Anthony Towns, there were some issues. I think his line's a little deceiving offensively. I know he had a great shooting game. He had a couple of bad decisions. A couple of his turnovers were pretty poor. But defensively, I think he was pretty good. There was that one play where the Timberwolves trapped Ja Morant baseline. Towns cut him off baseline. Beverly came back to double him. He was called for stepping out of bounds. Could have been called for a travel either way. There were a couple of plays like that where Towns was, could have been caught drawn into the web, got caught reaching like we've seen him do in the past, but actually really strong defensively in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the box score, you see, the Wolves only forced 11 turnovers, but that doesn't necessarily account for just how disruptive the Wolves were throughout the game. And you talk about the lob dunks, but that's been sort of the Wolves' kryptonite all season, with this really aggressive defense where, like, Karl-Anthony Towns comes up so far on the pick and rolls. They're really susceptible to those back cut, easy, lob dunks. And so that's like nothing new and nothing to be expected. But so long as the Wolves can keep the other things under control, close out successfully and under control on 3-pointers, put a lot of pressure on the ball, and they did. And they scored 130. The Grizzlies scored 117. But the Wolves defense doesn't have to be a top 10 defense for the Wolves to be successful. The Wolves defense has to be disruptive and aggressive enough to make sure that their offense can carry them to the victory.
Yeah, and the turnover thing's a great point. Obviously, Timberwolves fans know the Wolves led the league in opponent turnover rate, or forcing opponent turnovers throughout the season. And they only, like, to your point, only forced 11. They were -6, the Wolves were in the turnover battle. However, they made up for that by not allowing offensive boards. The Grizzlies had only 8 offensive rebounds. This is by far the league's best offensive rebounding team. And the Timberwolves have been one of the league's worst. I think they finished 29th in defensive rebound rate, but they were last for much of the season. The Wolves were a plus 11 on the glass. They only allowed 8 offensive rebounds. They actually grabbed 11 themselves. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 0 offensive rebounds. Brandon Clark had half of them for the Grizzlies. He had 4. So that's another benefit to keeping Jaren Jackson off the floor, not just his defense and also what he can provide offensively, but the offensive glass. I mean, that's how the Wolves are going to win the series, is turning Memphis over, which they didn't do a lot of, and controlling the glass. And then obviously knocking down open threes, I think, would be the other thing, which they did pretty well in this game. But the offensive glass was huge.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's another part of Karl-Anthony Towns' sort of comeback game. He had 4 offensive rebounds himself, and he was aggressive on the glass. You look at his numbers, and it's 13 rebounds, which is really solid for Karl. That's a higher Karl-Anthony Towns rebound game. Jaden McDaniels had 4 offensive rebounds, and so there was this team effort that existed this game that sort of, almost, it's the Wolves almost played like the Memphis Grizzlies play. You look at the stat sheet, and the Wolves stat sheet looks like a Memphis Grizzlies stat sheet, which is good. They played really, really well.
Yeah, and the other thing, by the way, we talked about the turnover rate being not what the Wolves would have wanted, or the turnover battle, I should say. Also the free throw battle. And if you watch this, I thought the officials did an okay job in this game, especially following up Tuesday's disaster from an officiating perspective. I thought this was actually really good. But if you're watching it, it feels like a lot of 50-50 calls actually went the Timberwolves' way. And they attempted 16 fewer free throws than the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies shot 43 free throws in this game. Ja Morant got to the line 20 times, and yet the Timberwolves still won this game by 13 points. They shot the ball at the rim so much better, to your point, playing a lot more like the Grizzlies. They got in the paint. They were good in the paint. They got offensive rebounds and second chance points. The Grizzlies did not. And obviously they did outshoot the Grizzlies from outside the arc, which it shouldn't be that big of a surprise outside of Desmond Bane. I mean, the Grizzlies have a couple guys that can knock down threes, but like Jaren Jackson was 0 of 5 from deep. The Grizzlies bench combined to be 1 of 8 from deep in this game. So to lose the free throw battle by 13 attempts, to lose the turnover battle by 6 turnovers, and to still win this game by 13, I in some sense, I guess you could say the Timberwolves should be thanking their lucky stars. Is that sustainable? I don't know, probably not. But the work they did on the glass is impressive, and that could be sustainable if the Timberwolves play like they did, and also defensively making open threes. These are all things, and also getting to the line a fair amount and making their free throws themselves, the Wolves as a team. Those things can all happen again. I think they should be consider themselves fortunate, though, given the turnover differential and the free throw differential.
Absolutely. But like those things can be mindset things, right? Like
Yep.
the getting on the glass is a mindset thing. It's about effort. It's about hustle. It's about the want to. And, so those things can show up again, and those things can flip the game when things aren't going your way. And so that was really good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'll give you the last word, Chelanga. Anything you want to say about this game as a whole, or what this means moving forward? I mean, I guess what does this mean moving forward in the series?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm looking for next game is how Memphis battles back against Anthony Edwards. I'm curious to see if if they go really aggressive when he has the ball. I'm curious to see how much they double him, if they try to make him beat that double, because Anthony Edwards hasn't been doubled very much in his NBA career. And so, how will he handle that? I'm not sure. I think Memphis might be a little bit more aggressive on him defensively.
Yeah, and real quickly to that point, the Grizzlies, defended D'Angelo Russell differently in this game. All season, D'Lo averaged 32 points a game. I believe it was against Memphis, shot the ball well over 50% from the field, was dynamic. The Grizzlies were determined to not let him walk into threes in the half court offense or in transition. And they did a great job on D'Lo. He shot, 2 of 11,
2 of 11.
But that meant that Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns got theirs. And it really is a pick your poison when all those guys are playing fairly well. And D'Lo didn't have a great shooting night, but if Ant is on, and if Karl-Anthony Towns is staying within himself and not in foul trouble, it's really difficult to beat this team or to slow them down offensively. Last thing I will say I had Sean Coleman and DeMichael Cole of Locked On Grizzlies on the show on Friday, and they asked me for my series prediction. I picked the Wolves to win game 1 on Saturday. They both thought the Grizzlies would win. And unfortunately, I did have to pick the Grizzlies to win the series. But I mean, I don't know. Now I feel like maybe there's enough momentum here. And also it would mean the Wolves would lose 4 of the next 5. And I'm not on board with that anymore. I'm feeling it after this first game. So we'll see. I'm not ready to officially change my prediction, but yeah, so I did pick the Wolves to win this game. I'm feeling good about that. All right, we'll be back. Of course, the Wolves don't play again until Tuesday, so we'll have the postcast live Tuesday. Of course, that game is still in Memphis. This podcast will appear on the Locked On Wolves feed, and you can go back and watch it on Locked On Sports Minnesota as well. Anything else, Chelanga?
No. Don't forget to listen to the CND NBA show. Thanks, Ben.
Absolutely, yeah. Chelanga, of course, writes for Zone Coverages on the CND NBA podcast. Be sure to check out that podcast, subscribe to it, and check out his work over at Zone Coverage as well. Thanks, Chelanga.
Cool. Thank you. Peace.